I'm blessed to be able to be with all of you this morning to share some thoughts with you on Mother's Day and to share a little part of myself with you. So now I have to start our time together talking about Mother's Day with a few thoughts from one of the most clever writers on the subject of moms ever, the delightful and insightful Erma Bombeck. She reminds us of these fun things. She said, "When your mother asks, 'Do you want a piece of advice?' it's merely a formality. It doesn't matter if you answer yes or no. You're going to get the advice anyway." She also said, "Someday, when my children are old enough to understand the logic that motivates a mother, I'll tell them, 'I loved you enough to bug you about where you were going and with whom and what time you would get home. I loved you enough to be silent and let you discover that your friend was a creep. I loved you enough to make you return that Milky Way with a bite out of it to the drugstore and confess, 'I stole this.' But most of all, I loved you enough to say no when you hated me for it. That was the hardest part of all." And she also told us, "Mothers are not the nameless, faceless stereotypes who appear once a year on a greeting card with their virtues set to prose, but women who have been dealt a hand for life and played each card one at a time the best way they knew how. No mother is all good or all bad, all laughing or all serious, all loving or all angry." And with that thought, I want to acknowledge that everyone is going to be experiencing Mother's Day and today's talk through very different lenses because of all of our very different experiences with moms. On this day that we honor mothers, there are many people who may have trouble or may not feel like celebrating. Some people might be missing a mom who has transitioned, and some moms might be grieving the loss of a child. We may have people with us today who did not have an idyllic relationship with their mom, or certainly not one that worked for them. Now, maybe you were the favorite, and maybe you were hurt because you did not feel like you were the favorite. Maybe you are a mom of color that has the extra burden of preparing your child for a world that speaks beautifully about equality, but we all know is not really equal. A world that can be inherently more dangerous for your precious children. This is something that I've been grappling with and that has weighed heavy on my heart and my mind on this Mother's Day. And whether you are missing your mom or worried about her, or worried about your kids, or celebrating your mom, or angry at your mom, well, your feelings are valid, and it's okay to feel them and acknowledge them. And it is also okay to decide that if those feelings are not working for you right now, that you can set those feelings aside for now and just take some time to celebrate the divine feminine that is within each and every one of us. Today, you can think of Mother's Day as a way to celebrate and honor all of those people in your life that nurtured and cared for you. Because that's really what Mother's Day is, right? We're celebrating the one or the ones that nurtured and cared for us. Now, the origins of Mother's Day, as celebrated in the United States, started way back before the Civil War. Anna Jarvis helped start Mother's Day work clubs, which were to teach local women how to properly care for their children. I think we could probably have some of that these days. I would like some folks to take some classes in that, but I digress. Following her mother's death in 1905, Anna Jarvis conceived of Mother's Day as a way of honoring the sacrifices that mothers made for their children. And in May of 1908, she organized the first official Mother's Day celebration at a Methodist church in Grafton, West Virginia, and it also saw thousands of people attend a Mother's Day event at one of Wanamaker's retail stores in Philadelphia. Well, following the success of her first Mother's Day, Jarvis, who, by the way, remained unmarried and childless her entire life, resolved to see her holiday added to the national calendar, arguing that American holidays were biased towards male achievements. She started a massive letter writing campaign to newspapers and to prominent politicians, urging the adoption of a special day honoring motherhood. Her persistence paid off, and in 1914, President Wilson signed a measure officially establishing the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day. Now, here's where it's kind of funny. While Jarvis initially worked with the florist industry to help raise Mother's Day profile, by 1920, she had become completely disgusted by how the holiday had become commercialized. She outwardly denounced the transformation and urged people to stop buying Mother's Day flowers, cards, and candy. And by the time of her death in 1948, Jarvis had disowned the holiday altogether and even actively lobbied the government to see if it could be removed from the American calendar. All right, now I'm not suggesting any of that, moms, so don't get upset. I think you should still get your candy and your flowers and your cards. And while I understand her resentment over the commercialization of Mother's Day and holidays in general, right? I'm really glad that we have a special day to remember moms. But maybe we can all do well to remember that it shouldn't just be about gifts or flowers or cards and commercial things, but really about truly honoring and being grateful to moms, making a heartfelt connection to say thank you and I appreciate you. And, maybe that'll come in the form of a macaroni necklace. I don't know. Myrtle Fillmore is often referred to as the mother of unity. And she wrote, "It is my great joy to perceive somewhat of the mother side of God, the divine love that never fails." Well, how did Myrtle express that divine love that never fails? She loved herself first. Now, many of us have heard her story, right? She heard this quote from E.B. Weeks at a lecture. "I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness." She heard that, and to the very center of her being, she believed it. And in time, truth in expression manifested, and she was healed. Truth in action. In the years that follow, she affirmed the well-being of others through prayer. Friends and strangers would write letters, and she in turn would affirm and pray with them. Myrtle also expressed her divine love that never fails by showing us how to affirm truth and hand any situation over to God, to divine might. In a letter she wrote to someone in need, found here in the excerpt in Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters. "Sometimes I have written a letter to God where I have wanted to be sure that something would have divine consideration and love and attention. I have written the letter and laid it away in the assurance that the eyes of the all-loving and all-wise Father were seeing my letter and knowing my heart and working to find ways to bless me and help me grow. So I suggest that you write a letter to God, telling, putting into words that which your heart holds and hopes for. Have faith that God is seeing your letter and your heart, and that there is wisdom and power and freedom and love to accomplish that which will meet your needs. After you have placed your heart's desires with God, don't be anxious or worried or negative. Don't be looking for signs that He has even responded. Just busy yourself with the work that He gives and with study and prayer to develop yourself into a real companion and a real radiator of happiness and inspiration. And as you do, so you become the radiating center towards which those are drawn who will add to your happiness and cooperate with you in the making of your life a beautiful success. Spirit intends you to be a radiating center that will draw you to whosoever you need to be well and strong and successful and prosperous. And so this morning I say, Happy Mother's Day to Myrtle Fillmore, who went to a lecture and received an affirmation, shared her divine love and her divine mind with others, and she has given us this sweet blessing that we now call unity. She changed her life, and she changed the world. And through her, we have been loved, nurtured, and shown how to express our divine love through unity. Now, I got to admit, when I first heard sermons about the divine feminine, it was kind of easy for me to understand or to comprehend that God had a feminine side, right? It was easy for me to accept that God was both father and mother. In my, I would say, fairly traditional way of looking at things, I could see both attributes of male and female characteristics in what my limited view of God was. Male, God was in charge. He was in charge. He had power, and you needed his permission to do things. Female, God, she was loving and wanted the best for us. She was willing to make huge sacrifices for us. And being created in God's image, we all have both the divine masculine and the divine feminine in all of us as well. And so we should celebrate that, right? Well, that's where you lost me. Well, what it wasn't easy for me to accept was that we should all celebrate and honor the divine feminine within ourselves. What? Celebrate my feminine side? Something that I have struggled with most of my life? And you say I should honor it? Well, no. No, thank you. I'm not going to do that. I might be able to honor some of the qualities that I associate with women and with moms, like being loving and kind, but being feminine has never helped me, has never been good for me in any way. So that I'm not going to do. I can't celebrate. All right, so here's the part of the talk, the Mommy Dearest talk today, where I get down to the tell-all part, right? The stuff that very few people know about me, including probably my family. And spoiler alert, there's no need to worry during any of this. I turn out just fine. I had a very challenging, difficult childhood. See, I lived in two very distinct and very different worlds. At home, I lived in this wonderful world where I was told that I was special, and I was loved, and I was smart, and I was funny, and I was the best kid ever. But unfortunately, in the world outside of my home, I was harassed and bullied and abused. It started early in my life, around the third or the fourth grade, and other kids would tell me that I was different. They would call me names. They would make fun of me for not being good at sports, or because of the way I ran funny, or because of the way that I spoke. And one of the things that seemed to upset them the most of all, and one of the things they made fun of me for, was being too girly. In the fifth and the sixth grade, it got physical. Boys would punch me at school and horribly on the bus. They would say vile things to me, and when I would ride my bike through Shady Grove, which was the neighborhood next to ours, Wendell Bates and his friends would often chase me on their bikes, and they would knock me over, and they would punch me, they would spit on me, and they would call me names. And they would try and get me to fight, and when I wouldn't, well, that would just spur them on more. Chet Castor, who had a burr haircut and was a few grades older than I was and lived a few houses down the street from us, well, Chet was a bully to almost everyone, but he was especially drawn to pick on me. And I can remember playing games like kick the can or tag that were, minimal contact, and having him tackle me or knock me to the ground and then laugh and call me a wimp and make fun of me for not being any good at the games. And he also, on numerous occasions, shot me with a BB gun, sometimes from inside of his house through a window, and sometimes chased me down the street with it. I was fairly nervous to go outside and play, never knowing what might happen. But I would say inside my house, things were very different. I watched wonderful old MGM musicals, and I played with my cats and dogs, and I spent time with my mom, laughing and having fun. The summer between 5th and 6th grade, my sister Lisa and I went to visit our dad in Kansas City, Missouri, and then to our grandmother's house in Arkansas for a short visit. And while there, my mom's appendix burst and she was hospitalized. My grandmother, Lisa, and I took a horrible bus ride home to Bossier City. And there were many complications after mom's procedure, and she actually died and was revived twice. Now, there's a lot more to that part of the story, but that's hers to tell for another time. So, mom was in the hospital for several months, and the hospital had very strict rules, and my sister Lisa and I were underage and not allowed to visit. And I would say that was pretty unbearable for me. My grandmother, I love her, still love her, but she was not a warm person. And though she loved us, she didn't express her feelings very well. She was stern, and being compassionate or sympathetic was not really her nature. She didn't have time for my fears and my worries about not seeing my mom for so long. And after 2 months of not seeing mom, I was pretty convinced that she had died and they just didn't want to tell us. And I got up one night crying and I begged my grandmother, "Tell me the truth. I know mom is dead, just tell me." And she yelled at me and told me to stop crying, stop being stupid, and they weren't lying. I should go back to bed. I went back to bed, but I was not convinced. A few days later, overwhelmed with all of the school bullying, distraught over not having my mom around, my source of love and encouragement, I decided that I didn't want to live anymore. And so I put a pillowcase over my head and I tried to suffocate myself. My grandmother came into the room to say goodnight, and she found me laying on the bed with my head in a pillowcase. Oh my gosh, she was so angry. She yelled at me and she told me that I was selfish and that she did not have time for my foolishness. She told me to stop being a baby and causing everybody more problems. And then she informed me on her way out of the room that you can't kill yourself with a pillowcase. You can breathe through a pillowcase. If you're going to kill yourself, you have to use a trash bag, a plastic bag. And I remember thinking, I can't even do anything right. I can't even kill myself. Now, let me be clear and say that while this was a very painful moment, I am not traumatized by it. You don't need to worry about me. And I am able to see the humor in the situation of how my grandmother handled things. And if you will picture Cloris Leachman as my grandmother, you'll be able to see the humor as well. Eventually, mom got better and she came home and life was better for all of us. Mom and Wayne got married shortly afterwards, and once again, there was lots of love inside the house. We moved to Texas in February 1st, 1975, during the 7th grade, and I was excited to have the chance to start over at a new school where no one knew me. It would be different. I would be different. I was not. And it was not. I was still shy. I was still bad at sports. I was still not a masculine, rough and tough kind of boy. I was called a fag and gay so many times at school before I even knew what the words meant. And almost every day in the 7th and 8th grade, I was made fun of verbally and physically, pushed, smacked, and poked. It was torture. It was tormenting. Why didn't I tell somebody? Why didn't I get help, you may be wondering? Well, kids receive some very unhelpful messages all the time about bullying. Stand up to the bully and they will back down. Well, there's two problems with that. First, that's not always true. Sometimes they increase their bullying behavior to show you that they can and that they're in control. And two, if we knew how to stand up to a bully, or we felt like we had the ability to do that, we already would have. Bullies are just scared and they have problems of their own. Well, I think that that is most likely true, but it doesn't help at the time the victim of the bullying. Tell the teacher, tell the principal, tell a coach, get help. Well, sometimes a teacher might address the problems with a bully, but the next time that that teacher is gone, the bullying is worse because you told. And sometimes the other kids join in the bullying because nobody likes a tattletale. Snitches get stitches, even in elementary school. And even worse, sometimes the teacher makes it your fault, tells you to be tough, be a man. Kids are often told, just ignore it. Don't react to it. They'll get bored and they'll stop. Well, there's so many problems with this. First, how long do you have to endure before the bullying stops? Years? Second, would adults allow another adult to hit them or hurt them or tease them in that way? I mention all of this to remind everyone, a firm reminder. Be careful what you say to kids directly and indirectly. And don't ask them or expect them to handle situations that you would never handle that way as an adult. And don't expect that a child is always going to have the knowledge, the life skills, the coping mechanisms, or the maturity to handle things on their own or in a way that best serves them. If you're told about a problem, help them solve it. But the main reason that I guess, and I guess most kids don't report things, is shame. I was embarrassed that I wasn't popular. I was embarrassed to tell my family, to tell my mom that I was not liked, that people thought that I was different and unlikable. After all, I seemed to have mom fooled. She told me that I was great and funny and talented and wonderful. How would I break it to her that she was wrong? That I had proof every day that I was none of those things. Well, my mother not only gave me life, but she saved my life. I can honestly tell you that I was only able to withstand and escape that other negative, soul-crushing outside world because of my mother. My dearest mother. My mommy dearest. Who had something more powerful than proof. She had love. She poured love into me every day. She told me all the time that I was special, that I could do anything, that I was smart and talented and funny. She told me all of this on a regular basis, not knowing what was happening at school or outside of the house, not because she was trying to counteract the negative energies in my life, but because she believed it to be true. I lived in two different worlds that were telling me that I was two different things. How did I know which one was the truth? My mother's love and support changed what I felt about myself. She believed in the good in me before I could believe it for myself. And because she believed in it, and she knew it to be the truth, I was eventually able to see it as a possibility for my truth. And fortunately, she had help in convincing me. There were other wonderful adult women in my life, other mom figures whose power of the divine feminine was shared with me. Like my mom's best friend, Aunt Sue, who always told me that I was handsome and smart and a really good kid. And so many teachers, like Miss Vickery, who was my sixth grade history teacher, who occasionally played the ukulele and taught us to sing "Nothing Could Be Finer Than to Be in Carolina in the Morning" and "By the Light of the Silvery Moon." Well, she told me that I was talented. Miss Nip, my very petite eighth grade English teacher, who I'm sure was not 5 foot tall, who told me that I was smart and funny and a good writer. My 10th grade French teacher, Madame Finisterre, who told me that even though I was really bad at French, I was still smart and talented and that I had a delightful personality. Mrs. Lambert, my 12th grade English teacher that wore thick glasses and had a prosthetic arm, who repeatedly told me that I was a very good and creative writer. Vicki Tapp, Lila Montier, Jan Parsons, who were my high school theater teachers, who always encouraged me even when I was shy and scared and so untrained, but they saw potential in me and they saw my love and my passion for theater, and they told me to keep trying, that I would get better and I would be able to do this one day. And of course, one of my very best mentors, Miss Persis, who in my very first theater class in college told me that I was talented, and she encouraged me to perform and to dance, and she gave me hundreds of opportunities to perform and to write and direct and to teach. And I never felt like I had the ability to do the things that she asked of me, but she always pushed me and told me that I did and told me to get it done. And then she would give me a fair and an honest critique, and she would tell me how to improve when it was over, and she would always tell me afterwards how great it was and how proud that she was of me. Still today, I will say that I benefit from powerful women who express the divine feminine, who are kind and loving and have strengthened me, have revived me, have replaced doubts with positive affirmations. My wonderful aunts Lily, Betty, and Frida, who tell me that I am a good man and how proud they are of me. The amazing ladies in my church family, Reverend Ann, Glenda, Marge, Becky, Diane, Naora, Annalisa, Sylvia, Marie, Janie, and Kay, and so many others that encourage me and trust me to take on leadership roles and responsibilities. The outpouring of love helps me to see myself more as I truly am. They help me to see myself through the eyes of God. I see the face of God in them, in you, and you help me see the face of God in myself. And so because of the wonderful, powerful, loving women in my life, and mostly my mom, my world is now filled with love and joy. As I said earlier, I turn out fine. And it may sound strange, but I don't think I would change things if I could. What I went through, well, it made me more compassionate and kinder to others. It definitely made me a better teacher and friend. And it taught me so many lessons, and it helped me to really understand love. While I still may have some holdover feelings about masculinity and femininity to work through, when I think about the divine feminine as that part of God, that part of each of us, that part of myself, that is kind and compassionate, that is caring, that is respectful, that is nurturing, that is supporting, that is love. That is something that I can celebrate and honor. And so this morning, this Mother's Day, I celebrate and I honor the divine feminine, that beautiful part of God that expresses itself as love, that I see in myself and that I see in each of you. All right, now your heart work for this week and for the rest of your lives is to be that divine motherly love in the world for yourself and for those around you. You know, you can never know what your kind words, what your expressions of love may do for someone. I've shared my very personal information with you here today to illustrate and to help you understand what a positive difference, what an impact that you can have on people. You can never know what someone is going through and how your positive affirmation may affect them. may change their life. So this week and always, please remember to be the face of God for others, to be the face of love for all that you come in contact with. You have the power to change someone's life. Change a life and change the world. And so it is. Amen.